One of them wanted to be the security guy. He claimed he was a security guy.
Welcome. I'm thinking, what happened to the chair there?
I couldn't have organised that better if I tried.
Welcome to a special edition of Security Guy Radio. Let's get right into it today. Very important show about Orlando. And Sharice, what's going on in the cyber world? Just give me a quick update because I want to get right into what's happening out
The
there.
quick cyber bit today is Twitter being hacked. Now, it has been released on leaksource.com that apparently 32 million Twitter accounts have been compromised. Now, the interesting thing about that is who released those compromised accounts. It's believed to have Russian connections, those same Russian
bastards.
Hacker that released the compromised accounts on the Russian social media site last week is the same hacker that released the compromised Twitter accounts.
That is not good. What are we doing about it?
Well, in true Twitter fashion, they are denying the breach.
Oh, okay. So how do we know what happened then?
So for those of you that do have Twitter accounts, I am one of them. Many of my Twitter friends that like to post tweets daily, they received a force majeure password reset. So that kind of tells you something.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, mine. I don't think mine's been hacked. Nobody listens
Well, I'm
to
just
it.
looking at mine now, just to have a look.
Oh, if mine's not hacked, yours is not going to be hacked. That's for sure.
No, that's fine.
So, Sharice, if we get a notification from Twitter to update any information, we should disregard, delete? How do we handle it?
I would recommend just following the procedure, resetting your password, because the likelihood that this breach is valid is very high, considering the source and considering the fact that several companies have now validated some of the compromised accounts.
Well, I think we should reset it without getting noticed. Then you're sure it's not phishing.
Gotcha.
Right? That's what I would do. Just reset it anyway. It doesn't hurt.
Yeah.
Try to reset it.
Proactively.
And now let's get into Orlando. There is some, to your point, some new stuff coming out about social media being involved in this. Not really important yet or pertinent to the case, but we wanted to talk about Orlando in a serious way. I don't know. I'm bugged about it. Oh, by the way, Hillary, welcome back.
Thank you.
I forgot to say, Hillary's back.
Hi, everyone.
And Paul's back. It's been a while. You guys have been in here.
Yes.
Glad you're here. And what are you doing now with your Archway Theater thing?
Yes, I am now a resident company member at the Archway Studio
that's a big
Theater
deal, right?
in North Hollywood. I feel very honored
Yeah.
to have been invited. And this weekend, we're wrapping up our last two shows of Oedipus Antigone. And you can get tickets at archwayla.com.
Can you say that again?
Archwayla.com.
No, before that.
Oedipus Antigone.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. Anytime, Paul.
All right. Now, this is not a well, it is a coincidence, and this wasn't planned, but we scheduled our guest, James DeMeo, to be out here, 6 weeks ago we scheduled this?
Yes. Yep.
And James happens to be an expert on venue security, so venue meaning sports arenas, venues. The nightclub in Orlando would be a venue, right? And that's what he does for a living. It's just a weird coincidence. He flew in from Texas today, last night, actually, while this was unfolding, and I'm glad we have you on the show, so welcome to the show.
Well, thank you, Charlie. Absolute pleasure to be here. Obviously, very difficult news coming out of Orlando the past few days, and obviously the threats and challenges and vulnerabilities continue on a daily basis for all of us entrusted with duty of care within the confined space of stadiums, venues, and arenas.
So I want to say a couple of things about this just as a commentary, and then let's talk mostly about solutions, right? Because you have solutions. Well, solutions, and I think we need to get that place. I've just kind of had it with all the Facebook postcards, all right? It's polarizing. There's a postcard that says, oh, well, he had psychological problems and he beat his wife and he walked in and bought a gun just like that and we need to ban guns. And I go, oh, here we go, right? And I'm not a gun-toting, well, I actually am a gun-toter.
I was about to say.
I do tote a gun, but
can't
I'm
say that.
not on the far right of, everybody should own a gun in every place in the world.
Sure.
We should look at it carefully, right?
Mm-hmm.
But some of the stuff is so intellectually dishonest.
Well, it's misinformation.
It's
isn't it?
misinformation.
the whole
It's an assault
weapon
rifle.
stuff.
No,
Yeah,
it's not an
it
assault
drives me
rifle.
nuts.
Wait, I'm sorry. An AR-15 is not an assault
No,
rifle.
it's a.
It's just
No,
a
I'm
long,
asking a
it's just a
que-
long
it's a
gun
rifle.
rifle. Yeah.
It
It's-
looks
And that's the
neato
problem.
with all the black things on it and the scopes and stuff, but if you took all those parts off, it's just a rifle.
But the
Yeah.
witnesses who were there described it as a pop, 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 pop type sound.
That's semi-automatic.
So a semi-automatic is not an assault rifle.
Correct. I heard it.
Yeah.
I heard the tape in CNN today, and it
Are
did
we
not
po-
sound
are-
like a machine gun to me. It was very fast, right? We could be wrong, but I do not think
No,
it was
they know
fully
it's a
automatic.
semi-automatic.
Semi-automatic,
Yeah, it's a
right.
Okay, so
semi-automatic.
I'm sorry. Just because I'm a layperson,
Yeah.
I'm just trying to understand. Are we getting into the weeds on the language here?
Nope.
Because
No.
it sounds like he got off a lot of rounds very quickly.
Yeah, but
But that's
I
but
can do
that's
that.
not but that's not
I could
technically
do
an
that.
assault rifle.
Actually, you could do that almost with a revolver.
You could do it better with.
Come
know.
on.
No, revolvers don't
Yeah.
jam. They don't jam. So
But
it's-
revolvers don't carry 10.
Yeah, they do.
Bullets
Some-
in a
There's
clip.
actually, I've just purchased one
Or
with
more.
9 rounds in it.
yeah, some do. Yeah, and they don't jam. You just have to reload.
357
Like
with
a-
9 rounds. No, 8 rounds.
That's the
not
one that
9.
goes around, or that's a clip?
No, that's the one
Yes,
that goes
let's-
I'm
around.
sorry, I'm
let me
not
give you
You're
a-
lucky.
It's
This
the
is
one that
not-
goes like this. That's right.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
one that goes like this, 9
There's
around,
an,
It's
eight,
the old-
there's an 8-shot,
the old Western
357 Smith & Wesson.
gun. Yeah.
but with
Yeah.
9 bullets.
Yeah, not
There's-
8.
No,
Sorry,
no.
it was
Some
8.
of the 22s
Well, you can
have
get
10.
the 22s, yeah.
have 10
yeah, but
rounds,
this
yeah.
is a 357.
So here's the problem with all this. There's a lot of misinformation. It riles people up. It makes people try to solve this problem with misinformation. And I want to talk about real information today. And our solutions today aren't going to be perfect, but they're going to be something that makes sense.
But why do people say assault weapons? Is it to create fear? I mean, that's
No, I
that's
think
the
so.
Point.
Well, I think you
I
look-
think it's
you
to create
look
fear,
at
right?
it.
That's what
I-
they're doing.
Well, I think also you look at that weapon and you know what's been done with it, and I don't think it is a giant leap to be afraid of that.
Right. So here's my proof, and tell me if I'm wrong on this, Paul. Here's my proof that it's hype. Most shooters and James, maybe you can tell me I'm wrong here. Most shooters that go shoot places up have no prior gun experience. We kind of know that. They're kind of a first-time gun buyer, mostly not highly trained with guns, and all of them go get an AR-15, which is proof that it's baloney because it's the last weapon I would choose if I was going to do that. You know why? Because it's a big-ass 22-inch thing that you walk around, hey, look, that guy has a rifle, let me shoot him. If I conceal it, if I have a gun, if I have a 6.0 with 20 rounds in it, that's more rounds than some ARs carry in California because you only have 10
And
rounds.
in a
right?
large venue
So
with a lot of people.
if it's such a large and overbearing gun, I'm still unclear as how did he get into the club? If was it because of the procedures that they
Well,
had?
let me ask you, are you going to stop him with that? That's the other question, okay? You're not going to say, hey, I'm out of here. I'm not stopping him. We don't know enough about the security person at the
And
gate.
that's where our expert comes in.
Yeah, we don't know enough if the guy at the guard at the venue was off duty. We think he was or armed or something. But it's his individual choice to engage the guy. Me,
But he did engage.
so we don't know.
apparently.
Something happened.
some
We know
point.
right.
Yeah.
So if the guy was going to get in and conceal that, right, you carry handguns. I can put 2 handguns in my waistband that each hold 20
Okay, so-
rounds,
okay,
and
okay.
Well,
boom, I'm done.
the Virginia Tech guy just had handguns.
That's right.
Yes.
all he used.
Okay, great. So there are other weapons that can do more damage.
Correct.
How does that help us mitigate the guys or people who are doing that with these weapons?
Okay. Well, one thing is that
I don't know how that
the
it's
call
helpful to say that you
the
can have
call
more
to
damage.
get rid of the call to get rid of background checks. I don't hear people calling for that. That's NRA hyperbole. I don't think that really happens. But calling for more strict gun controls doesn't make sense because this guy, they just did he have a mental issue? Somebody said he.
I don't know. Well, he was just mad. He was
Yeah, but I
just,
thought
you
he
know,
at some time went to counseling or something. Maybe let's say that's
he had
true.
anger management issues.
So let's
a
say
lot
he
of
was
details
described
are
as
coming out
being
about this, whether or not
bipolar.
they're
Let's just go down-
full or not. Yeah.
Let's go down the list. All right. So 1, he beat his wife. Guess what? California, no more gun, pal. In the database, you can't buy a gun.
Are you okay with that?
Absolutely.
Hey,
I'm
hey,
okay
no,
with that.
I'm trying to get
Oh, absolutely.
get where we are.
Well, I'm trying to tell you how it failed. How it
Okay.
didn't fail was at the gun store because all this data that precluded him from doing this did not get to the gun store.
Including
that's a failure.
the FBI surveillance.
That's a
How's
failure.
that
That's a
If
failure of
he's been
administration.
interviewed by the FBI over terrorism
Twice.
at least that should be flagged, and the feds should go and
That is
say,
just
"Why are
a dumb
you
thought.
trying to buy a gun?"
Is that
You
a
know?
result of too much metadata? That there's just too much collection, and so
well-
No,
they're
I
not
think,
looking.
I think it's
they're
the
really following
liberal
through.
laws because nobody wants the feds having all that information.
Yeah, it's a
But yet,
combination.
if
That's
you're
the
on the
problem with
FBI
it.
watch, there's a no-fly zone law, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Why? maybe that could be considered for a potential augmentation of the existing laws.
So
I
look,
like
when
that.
when the head of a major, let's say, corporation once told me, I checked with my men at the bureau and they said that can't be done. Who was from the bureau? We're all in trouble. Okay, that's the mentality. Part of the mentality. The other part of the mentality is, I heard somebody report twice on different stations, not Fox, by the way, just to get your
I
sourcing
have no
correct.
problem with Fox.
That apparently he was checked twice, but there's an internal policy in the Justice Department. The policy says if you investigate somebody and you don't get something on them within a certain period of time, you drop the investigation. Now, that is not typical police protocol. Cold cases are still solved. You see the TV shows, right? If it's a serious thing, you work on it, right? Now, that could be stopped for two reasons. Budget, which does happen. It's real. We can't afford to have you running around. If they put everybody in the FBI surveillance pool under surveillance, they would need 14 FBI agents per terrorist to follow them around. And there's thousands of them. It can't be done. So maybe it's a budget. So I can't blame them all for that. On the other hand, if this is just BS policy for political correctness because, we can't accuse people, because blah, 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 and we're going to turn it off, then that's wrong. And that's a failure.
But if I don't have the right paperwork in order, I can't get my license at the DMV, and
I
I
know.
can't update my electric
Yeah, but the
utility.
DMV isn't a right. To drive a vehicle
It's not a
isn't
right.
a right.
That's right. It's not
Whereas
right.
owning a gun, per the Second Amendment,
Right, but per the Second
is a
Amendment, we can
right.
have reasonable restrictions.
I agree.
And so this is a
But is it
reasonable
reasonable?
restriction. Is it reasonable to have somebody who's on the no-fly list be limited from purchasing
I'm
a
just
gun
saying,
within a week,
is it
within less than a
reasonable per
week
the
time?
Second Amendment?
Well, I think it is, all right, personally. But if you look at all these things
I'm not
where
saying
we
it's
could
not.
have caught the guy, we've talked about this in other shows, you know this, right? Virginia Tech, 72 things the Virginia Tech guy did. One of which was, let me go to the shooting range and shoot targets on the ground
Oy.
because that's a normal protocol. Somebody should have called on that. So we're going to find, again, in all these shootings, that this guy forecast what he was going to do to a lot of people in a lot of ways. And he was on a progression of anger and a progression of violence and a pathway. And then people could have stopped him and said, what are you doing to the police academy when we kicked you out of here? Remember we were sitting in the lobby, James?
Yes.
And apparently he went to the police academy. He was in the classes. Something happened. They didn't like him. They got rid of him. He shows up later in his car, and they run out and greet him and say, you're not coming in here. Very unusual that they would know that unless they were following him and watching him. Something was going on with that, right? So we're going to find out more. But I'm not going to jump on the fact that this is a big, the solution is let's get rid of guns, right? Let's follow the policies and the laws that we have, and the laws, I think, should have caught this guy. I really think they should have, all the protocols, And I think in California, maybe, you would have gone into some more automated databases to say bink. But if they had flagged him and the FBI said, okay, put him in the national, whatever it is, gun database and background checks.
Right.
In California, is it 14 days waiting?
or is it 20? Is it 14? Or 20?
It's a long time.
It's a long time.
Right,
It's a long
because I
time.
just bought something. I'm thinking,
Yeah, it might even be longer. I can't
Yeah.
remember now.
So
yeah.
that gives the FBI plenty of time. Because when I walk in and fill out the paperwork, it goes in the database, and they got 14 days or 21 days to say, oh, look, I got this memo, and what's his name is down at the gun shop. Let's call him up and see what he's doing. Because we investigated him for terrorism. We would have caught him that way. So I think it's a failure of the system. I think, can there be better checks? Yeah, because what I've been told by the gun shop owners is that it takes weeks and weeks and weeks for the FBI, and they're so backlogged on the background checks. That's a procedural problem. That's a government problem. That's not a law problem, and it's not a political problem. Really, I don't think so.
I think that the political problem that I see is, which is not just on this issue, but on many issues, is that people are just entrenched in their camps.
Yeah.
And there needs to be some middle ground. And if it's a guy like you saying, you want to know what, I think all the laws in place should have caught this, but we continue to have all these problems, so let me take one step this way. And I happen to think, would the world be a better place without guns? Yeah, but it's in our Second Amendment. The Supreme Court has ruled on it. The ship has sailed. It's an individual right. Let's deal with that.
I agree.
And so I think if we all just take one step in on either side and just have a conversation, we're far more likely to figure out what the heck is going on, because this is a problem.
Well,
It's not as big of a problem as heart disease and childhood obesity and any number of things which kill, or sexual assault, which harms far more people.
1,800 people a year die from domestic violence. Where's the outcry?
Okay, exactly.
Yeah, but
900
Okay.
people have died in gunshot mass shootings, so to speak, since what was Kansas
when-
State? 69 or something like that?
When you look at gun ownership, you've got to look at what's happening in other countries. Now, France, where you can't own a gun, right? I think it's even tighter than the UK.
It's very tight, France. Yeah.
You had the same thing a few months ago with the same type of weapon, and in fact, I think they actually had fully automatic weapons.
I
Didn't
think
they?
so. Yeah.
So
It's about violence.
No,
I
sure.
mean,
Psychopaths are
know.
going to find a way and to get a weapon, and they're going to use whatever ideology that they've found to allow them to go kill people. I get it. I get what you're saying. But does that mean we just throw our hands up and say, okay, this is part of the human condition?
No,
Everybody
I don't
gets
think that
strapped
either.
so we can deal with it.
I just think from what I know about, police agencies and protocols and bureaucracies and stuff, my opinion is this guy should have been caught at least 5 different times.
but also you got to control the venues, right? I
So
mean,
let's
that's the point.
now that
Because
we've
let's talk about the venue.
let's talk about the
Right.
venues, right?
Right.
So
You know?
sorry we've hogged your show there. John. Sorry about that.
So,
Passionate.
I
We
thought I'd
just,
close
we just
these
get
guys
started,
down.
and it's.
I agree with you. Bottom line is I agree with you. We got to take a little breath and back up and have
We
a conversation
agree.
and not say, you're a gun nut and you're a crazy liberal and nobody's going to solve anything, right?
Correct.
But guns don't kill people. People kill people. I know you don't like that, but it's an inert object, and there's 300 million guns. And if you look at how many people die from guns as opposed to other things, it's not that the guns are dangerous. It's that our society's violent, and we have to address the pathway to violence. And if we catch them on the pathway to violence, that's how we're going to solve this. And we can catch them by not violating anybody's rights that way. But let's not talk about that. That's too complicated to solve. What I think we can help solve is how to protect Hillary when she's in the theater.
Please.
All right?
absolutely.
So let's talk about that.
Terrific conversation, certainly worth further investigation. The threats and vulnerabilities continue on a daily basis. Again, we're not fear mongers. What we want to do is create education proactively and change the mindset from reaction to proactive in nature. The asset protection discipline for many years has been reactionary in nature. As you
Right.
mentioned, these incidents continue to happen on a daily basis. So what can we do collectively throughout the industry, citizens involved, to be proactive, to have situational awareness, to train, whether it's professional sports or smaller venues where these incidents did occur? It's incumbent upon all of us to be proactive in terms of sharing information, lessons learned, working within the confined space. When you look at densely populated areas with a lot of people in a concentrated location, that is a prime target for terrorist activity. We've seen that. So again, my experience is working in professional sports and working with researchers, opening the Barclays Center in 2012 with AEG. Can you imagine trying to evacuate 18,000 patrons from a Brooklyn Nets basketball game, knowing that you have mass transit hubs, MTA, Long Island Railroad, communications, the importance of incident command, the importance of the gatekeepers, so to speak, security, guest services, knowing what to do, cross-training, cross-pollinating their resources to know what to do in times of crisis. That is the billion-dollar buildings, Levi Stadium, which I visited last year. The technology is incredible, but it's only as good as the people that know how to utilize the software proactively. Smaller venues, we need to revisit the conversation as far as what they're doing. Are they just checking purses and handbags? Or do we eventually have to go to metal arches and metal screening?
Well, but how do you do that with, and I'm going to use Disneyland as the example, right? Because they thought about that after 9/11. They talked about it when I was there. How do you get 50,000 people a day through that? Like it takes about 1,000 an hour if you do a movie screening, right?
It's a terrific question.
It's not
Again,
possible, really.
And again, we have to do this expeditiously and also in the interest of safety, because those are choke points and bottlenecks where terrorists will look. You have to have more than one way in and one way out. We saw with the Paris bombing that there was 80,000 patrons, including the president of France, in the venue. Thankfully, that guard, who had about 10 years in the industry, brought his A game to work that day. We all need to collectively bring our A+ games to work every day in light of current challenges. So again, if you look at sheltering in place, which was the correct scenario, our terrorist organization is looking to see how we reacted, and maybe next time wait on the egress when fans come out to cause mass collateral destruction.
Now, is that lucky that everybody in Paris behaved in the stadium instead of panicking? Was it lucky, or was it training, or what?
I think it's a combination of a lot, because celebratory, and you know this, Paul, from Europe, a lot of the folks in that venue thought fireworks were going off the street because it was a celebration of sorts.
You mentioned something about situational awareness and how the organizations or the owners of those facilities need to be able to respond in moments of crisis. The funny thing about this whole Orlando incident is I haven't heard anything of the club ownership management. Where were they? And why was there only one door, the entrance to the club, the only way in and out? And why were there padlocks on all those doors?
Well, remember what was the tragic fire years ago with the band playing? Remember that back east?
Right.
Exactly.
Well, there's been several, weren't there?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just
Like that,
that's a classic
Pyrotechnics.
event venue where they lock
Yeah.
things up. They don't want people sneaking in the back door, and that's just stupidity.
And again, and great points, everyone. When you're in a confined space, you have so many different challenges. Again, it could be a fire, it could be an IED, it could be some type of active shooter situation. It could be an employee that was just terminated, and now you have a workplace violence situation. Where are the signs? We have to look for the signs. We have to do the research, but the research is only as good as us imparting that knowledge to the staff to effectively utilize that information and knowledge and train proactively.
So let's talk about this. So this is always the challenge, right? There's a lot of smart people in the world. There's a lot of smart people in this room. We got good solutions for things. We can't get the end user to say, let's adopt it for a couple reasons. There's high turnover in venues, right?
Absolutely.
If you got a lot of guards, what's the turnover, right? Academy Awards,
Oh,
we had
God, yeah.
every year we had 500 new guards coming in, hard to keep up and train you, and then you're gone, right? And then you have misinformation, right? So some idiot is on Twitter today from Australia saying, hey, look, we banned guns in Australia, no mass shootings. And I go and research and I go, no. Because he defined a mass shooting as it had to be 4 more people dead.
Yeah.
But Australia with no guns still has killings. And, we forget about the chocolate factory. Did you leave that out of your tweet, right? When the terrorists came and took over the chocolate factory, right? So decision makers, I think, are confused with all this misinformation about things. And that makes it hard for them to say, let's do it. I love AMC theaters when those big, giant red things come in and they say, if the big red monster comes in, do this. And that's burned into my head. I know exactly where to go in an AMC theater. What can they do in a venue like a sports arena or a stadium to do things like that? I think we can train visitors as part of their experience that they stand up and point to the exit, make it fun. We could do something like that.
Great points. And again, it's incumbent upon us because we have that duty of care to educate the fans before they come to the venue. Okay, so we can push out the message through social media. Indianapolis 500, let the folks know what are the acceptable, tolerated behaviors before they come to the venue.
Is anybody doing that now?
We should be doing it if we're not. Professional sports does a good job. They push out the message. They use signage. They educate their fan base through social media. But it's incumbent upon folks that work inside those types of environments to proactively train and, again, make that connectivity with the fan base before they come. And it's also, I look at it from a standpoint, if you're a proactive security manager running a certain venue, you really should know the demographics of the crowd before they come to your venue. If there was an incident with a performer in Houston and now he's coming to Austin or he's coming to Long Beach, it's incumbent upon all of us to go on YouTube, find out what went right, what went wrong, and tweak our security protocols and policies to best deal with those demographics. Okay, so crowd control is real important. Education is real important. Social media is huge between Twitter, Instagram, because that's where the connectivity is. The marketers are trying to attract the fans because they want to live in the moment. So everyone is tweeting and texting, and again, social media can be used for obviously very good, positive reasons.
Sharice, to your point, I did see on CNN today that I don't know if you caught this, but the club owners were tweeting in real time. Leave,
Yeah, I saw
run.
that.
Right.
Yeah.
So they tried to use
And
that.
other victims during the shootout,
Yeah.
unfortunately, some were Snapchatting and unfortunately met an unfortunate demise.
Right, distracted by
so-
they're in Snapchatting to their friend, and you can hear the gunshot in the background through social media.
Right.
So people are using it. We're there with the venues. It's part of the venue experience as it uses
Exactly.
social
Yeah.
media. You got to figure out a way to get them to understand that, hey, we want you on Twitter when you walk in here because if something happens, that's what we're going to communicate with you.
Exactly.
And if it's not Twitter for the stadium and it's Snapchat for your theater, maybe that's more appropriate because people take more pictures maybe, right? Then we should get those visitors. Just at the beginning of your show, you stand up and say, okay, everybody log into Snapchat, put it on silent. Something happens, we're going to direct you. And I think that's just a simple, no-cost thing we can do.
Exactly.
What would you do that in a theater environment? Would they go for that kind of plan?
I think opening up with, hey, welcome to the theater. Here's what to do in case of a terrorist attack.
That's what AMC Theaters does. It doesn't lower their
I
movies.
get it.
Or earthquake.
Earthquake, right, in case of an
Right, same
emergency,
thing.
right?
big
so
red
I
monster.
think it has to be framed as not just active shooter situation, but if there's an earthquake, if there's a fire, where the exits are. I think also I'm very curious, James, to get your input on just as a person out in the world. I'm not a security expert. How can I be proactive when I'm in a venue to look out for myself, for my daughter, for my friends when we're together?
Well, just some of the things you just mentioned, but again, just taking the time to kind of educate yourself, sharing information with your friends and family. I think we're all in this together, and these challenges are not going away anytime soon. And knowledge is power, and we operate from a position of strength when we're knowledgeable about what to do in times of crisis.
We're going to do a show. I'm trying to put it together with Geophedia. Remember Geophedia? About that, right?
Yeah.
So Geophedia captures all the social media, and they sell it to a police department, a database. The news uses it, right? And what we're going to try to do is do the Paris incident. Maybe we'll do this one. Maybe it's not appropriate. It's too soon. I'm not sure. But we're going to do Paris, and we're going to go through all the live social media that was happening at the time and look at it. And he told me, the first one is, 7 a.m. The first tweet was some lady says, "Oh, I just heard some explosion at the airport. What's going on?" And we're going to look at it through the eyes of the people inside. And I think what we'll see is they provided valuable information that had the police been monitoring that, maybe different outcome. I'm not saying better. It's not. There's no better outcome in any of that stuff, right? But it could have been used tactically.
But
to
it's
help
still
them.
that's still reactionary to James' point. Like there.
Well, no, but it's live, you see. So it's a live incident command. Using you as a person that could be a victim is actually one of my sources of information.
During the San Bernardino shooting, 'cause
Yeah.
we had a facility out there next to.
Oh, that's right.
Where that was going on. A lot of our information that we were using was coming through Twitter. I mean, we were watching Twitter all the time and it was very, very useful. I mean, just watching that stuff. Plus you could get in the San Bernardino attack.
Oh, that's right. You could hear
system.
the police on that.
Pretty
Yeah.
useful. But when you're out, don't you look at the way out? When
I
when
do
you're
now.
somewhere?
Yeah.
You better coming on this show.
No, absolutely.
You should have been before.
No, and I'm also aware of the mantra of run, hide, fight when dealing with an active
Yeah.
shooter situation. If possible, you evacuate. If not, you find some place to quietly hide, silence your electronic devices, and ultimately, if you have no other choice, you and whoever's with you needs to fight back. That's sort of the lay person mantra to deal with in those situations. It's still reactionary, though, ultimately, right? So how do we proactively...
Oh, how do you tell before that there's going to be... Well, I suppose that's the point. If you arrive somewhere and you realise that they haven't got security, is that when you make a decision, I'm going in or I'm staying out?
Right.
No, that would change
Well,
venues
my
real
question
fast.
you know?
is
Right.
where is the line between the responsibility of the venue owner and management to provide adequate security controls for that place? For example, the restaurant business has the food inspectors that come and make sure that the food is sanitary for provisioning of eating, or the OSHA who comes in and makes sure it's a safe place for employees to work. Where's the security protocols inspected in venues that are safe for patrons?
Is
Well-
there oversight?
Well-
Is there a government
there?
agency?
No, there's no oversight.
Well, again,
There's England has plans that are governmental, that are recommendations, but the United States does not. It's really up to the individual owner in the venue in the
Not
area.
the state or local?
No.
we talk about
Interesting.
the catchphrase is duty of care. For the 2.5 to 3 hours that a patron comes on inside your stadium, venue, and arena, the entrusted duty of care to make sure that we're doing everything within our power. And that's alcohol beverage control programs, risk mitigation, slips, trips, and falls. Beer spills on the concourse, they must be cleaned up immediately, right? So from A to Z, it's incumbent upon all of us, because that's where the line is. Once they come inside the venue, we assume, we take ownership in that duty of care. That is our calling, that's our duty, to keep those folks safe.
And the duty of care for the stadium is not the same duty of care for your theater.
Of course.
See, so you have that problem where
Right.
how do you get to a basic level of best practices?
But it's something that I've never really thought of. I mean, we've worked God knows how many special events.
Oh, yeah.
But there is no real government agency that are actually going in and inspecting all of the security plans. I mean, we've worked with OSHA and, different agencies, but there's nobody that really goes in and says, show me your complete security plan.
well, in maritime there is, right?
Maritime.
Maritime's a pretty
Yeah.
good model. Maybe
Yeah.
they should look. You're familiar with the maritime model? The Coast Guard comes in and acts as the what do they call it, the service
Yes.
security officer,
Yeah,
whatever,
yeah.
and they set protocols and guidelines and says, look, you're all in the port. You all got to act this way minimally. And by the way, if you don't have enough money, we're going to help you do something else. That might be a good idea.
Well,
I'm
you've
not-
got your port facility security plan, and you? I mean,
and you have
that's
to have a
what
plan.
You have to produce.
And that has to be
Yeah.
approved by the Coast Guard. Now, the only problem with it is that if you're a small business and Paul's a large business, you get away with not buying the latest gadget because you can't afford it. But at least there's some minimum standard.
But could
there.
somebody do that? I mean, is that possible? A government agency? I hate to build more government agencies.
You're
but-
just you and your England socialism stuff. I don't get all this government.
But it's obviously something that we need at this point.
I think
mean,
it
if you're
could be.
getting
I
this
mean,
stuff
if you
going on,
establish a minimum baseline of safe, precautious protocols, for example, having more than one exit sign, showing the way out of the building.
See,
and,
but that's
or,
already there, isn't it?
alarms.
Yeah, that
See,
basic
that
stuff's
type
there.
of thing is already there. But I'm talking about layers of security, like what happened, yesterday. Should somebody have come in and said, you know what, one armed security guard with a level of threat that obviously a gay club must have, problems going on,
I'm sorry. Why must a gay club have problems going on?
because there's a lot of hatred out there for gays, as you've seen. You got a whole religion that says that gay people are evil.
Right.
Most
pretty bad,
most religions hold that. There's not one in particular that has the monopoly on homophobia.
Well, Church of England doesn't care.
The Anglicans don't care.
Not Church of England. You can do what you like in the
Noted.
Church of England.
Noted.
So, to your point, I think here's the challenge in that. You know what I always say in the show? All security is what? It's personal,
Yes.
and it's local, and it's now. And James, unless you tell me differently, I don't see how you, as the super duper CSO of Los Angeles Memorial Coliseum, can tell 95,000 people what to do and make it successful. I don't see it happening. What I do see is you training them before they get there. The back of their ticket says, here's an exit plan.
Right.
You put it on the Jumbotron, some funny thing. I always like to make people laugh to listen to our show. It works, right? They learn it, they remember it, they participate. All right, everybody stand up and point to the exit. And we do some kind of thing where you get to, and then you have individual security agents taking care of their own individual security, and that's going to be more successful.
It's a successful model, and again, computer simulations, tabletops. When law enforcement comes in and they're working, let's say the Staples Center, it's incumbent upon them to know where the exit signs are. It's incumbent upon them to know who's running the venue. It's one of those situations. Everybody needs to know the physical attributes of the venue in times of crisis.
How do you handle that? Let's say you're working Staples Center and
Okay.
you're hiring the guards.
Yep.
High turnover in guards.
Very high.
How does that guard that just showed up to you who hadn't been in the Staples Center, how can he possibly know where the exit is? right?
I've been really proactive in my writings about these 5-minute huddles before tip-off. It's not going to cut it anymore. And I've been to those pre-event meetings. So we have to change that kind of approach. And again, you may have a basketball game on a Monday night, a circus on a Tuesday night, some type of heavy metal concert on a Wednesday night. 3 completely different demographics. And you have to prepare for each of those challenges.
Do you think each challenge needs to be prepared for separately? Is it a different plan, or is it kind of a basic plan because people are people?
But again, it depends on what kind of problems that performer may have had at a different venue before they come to your venue.
So you got to look at the threat level.
But no,
I think so.
But the argument against that is that there was a shooter at Sandy Hook, and there was a shooter at a public facility in San Bernardino, and there was a shooter at a nightclub. The fact that it was kids and a public facility and a nightclub didn't mean that the threat level was any higher or lower.
Well, we look at hard targets and soft targets, and it seems like we're getting a predominance of soft target attacks, and could be retail loss prevention next.
Do you
We don't
think
know.
they consider a stadium a hard target?
I think so, because
Tell me why.
Because we have, especially in professional sports, and you have DHS, FBI, local law enforcement. You imagine the Super Bowl, the amount of preparations 2 years in advance. They go into A through Z, incident commands, communications. It's just a monumental task in terms of preparation. So again, that kind of scenario takes a lot of time, a lot of pre-planning. But what about the smaller venues that don't have the resources? How do we handle
as
that?
we saw yesterday.
Exactly. So how do we
Do you
revisit?
think that this incident is going to change the way that they approach smaller venues?
If I was running a small venue anywhere in the United States as a result of what happened this past weekend, for me to be a proactive security leader, I would have to change the way I would conduct business.
But it's funny, they didn't change it after that fire. And that fire was so security fire 101, right? And we're hearing, and again, we don't let facts get in the way here on Security Guy Radio, but didn't I hear that some things were locked or something at this club in Orlando, and
Right, that's what
maybe
saying,
different
yeah,
exits?
first
Why are they
level,
running into
yeah.
the bathroom? Why don't they is there a back
Yeah.
door? I don't know.
Right.
But yeah, they have to change.
So
all
we
that
have
stuff.
to look at doing threat and vulnerability assessments. on a continuous basis. We have to continue to train proactively. We have to educate the patrons, whatever the environment that they're in. And again, it goes back to duty of care, as we mentioned. That's where the fine line is. We haven't even discussed the litigation side of this. We look at the Dodgers, the Brian Stowe incident in 2011. They got sued for $15 million because they cut corners on security. 2 years ago in Austin, the organizers of South by Southwest, 4 people died in a drunk driver fatality incident.
Oh,
No-
leaving the event.
Notice of claim.
Yeah.
Okay. The Chicago White Sox got sued for $100,000 because a couple of fans got assaulted. In
See,
the
I don't
parking lot.
understand it because that happens every day in England.
So,
Oh, in the soccer
in
games.
the
is that-
soccer
you know,
games.
I mean, we talked, Paul, briefly. a little
Nobody
bit.
would have anybody.
But, again, along those points, Euro 2016, the Russians shooting off flares.
well, that was pretty bad.
We
That
talked
was,
about how did those flares get into the
right.
stadium. I've written proactively about Rio. There's a lot of concerns about the 2016 Olympic Games in terms of the crumbling economic infrastructure in Brazil, the high gang activity, the possibility of a presidential impeachment. We have the possibility of kidnappings. We have world-class athletes going to a country that spans the topography is 10 countries. The numbers are skewed, $190 million in terms of security and 85,000 security personnel. I don't know. My contacts in Brazil are telling me that's not the case. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens the rest of this month, July and August, as we roll through the Olympics. When you have these mega events, are we prepared? Are we up for the task of protecting people, again, with these mega events?
Well, so I'm not a big fan of thinking that a guard can protect you. I was in the business. Paul, you're in the business.
Yes, unfortunately. Well, no, when they were trained by us,
Well, that's the only
you know,
exception, of course.
these are so
But
many-
even then, in other
An
words,
assembly line of James Bonds
There's-
came out of your office.
this goes back to the argument I made about, taking a guard and saying you're not responsible for my safety. Really, he's going to be taking care of his own safety if a gun starts flying. What we can hope he can do is give us information. Hopefully, he can report to somebody, report positions of people that are causing trouble, call for backup, direct people in. But how is one guy going to protect? If one guard came in here, how can he protect all 5 of us, right? So I think their motto of just
You
putting
talk about armed or unarmed?
well,
Unarmed.
I would
is
say
it?
either one, right? I mean, this is the safest studio in Hollywood right now. I'll tell you that right now. Okay,
No, but
you guys don't have to worry about
but
that.
to your point, if someone busts on the door right now and starts spraying, what do we do, right?
I shoot him in the head. That's what I do. We're all done.
I get it,
Conversation.
but the first rounds have gone off, right? So if I hear,
Oh, no, I'm going to shoot him before he gets in the door.
but what if he was just bringing coffee? How
I'm
do
not
you
gonna shoot him
know?
with coffee.
Well,
He's
he's
the
How
guard.
do you know that
Well, if
he's
he's
going to
just
start?
bringing coffee,
You just
he's
told
got
me a
drop
shooter
the
came
coffee.
in.
He didn't get
I
the weapons,
said he
see.
came in and started shooting. How do you know but until it happens, right? So in the eventuality that happens, Chuck, please tell me, as a patron or a guest in your studio or anywhere else, do I hit the deck? Do I throw my chair at him?
Chuck
What
can
do
whip
I
it
do?
out faster than you've ever seen.
Thank you.
Okay, but
I knew that was
No,
coming. I
okay.
set myself up. All right.
my delicate
Thanks for
ears.
coming, everybody.
Please, Paul, please.
Remember, we're on
Well, I was only talking about his gun.
now. We're on
I got it.
iHeartRadio.
I got it. No, but
We
but
have to
tru-
behave. We're on iHeartRadio now.
in
All
all
right.
seriousness, short of Kevlar and being armed myself, what do I do?
Well, the first thing you do is duck and cover and try to conceal yourself, and then you run like hell. And if you're cornered like this, we'd be cornered.
You'd fight.
You'd fight.
That's it.
And here's why you probably will be successful. Okay, guns aren't that accurate. I'm doing a study right now. I don't know if I'll be able to get this data, but I'm going to try and add up all the bullets that were shipped to World War II and fired, and how many people died. And it's going to be 1 billion more bullets were fired than people got killed. All right, as tragic as the number was in Europe, guns are only as accurate as proximity, speed, velocity, all kinds of
You
things.
need
involved.
to use like the siege in Fallujah to have it be applicable to now, because the guns from World War II are hardly the weaponry that's being used on the street now.
No, it's all the same. A gun, no. A Tommy gun had 250 45 caliber bullets in it.
They weren't using Tommy guns in World War II.
Yeah, they were.
Yeah.
Tommy
The
guns?
Thompson submachine gun was the
like
gun.
James Cagney?
That's the gun.
All
That's
right.
the gun.
Okay,
yeah.
go ahead.
So Paul and I are not really as afraid of guns as we're concerned about them, but I'm not going to panic when somebody points a gun, because I know if I throw something at them, if I duck, if I do a bunch of things, I'm probably not going to get hit. I just know that. I've been shot at on 3 different occasions, and I can prove that, okay? And they missed me by inches because I was moving. So movement is one thing to avoid target acquisition,
Okay,
right?
so don't stay still. Move.
Unless, to your point, sheltering in place, right? Don't panic.
No. So
And you got to take a couple seconds to say, what's my situation? What's going on? What's in my proximity? I don't want to freeze. I need to take 1 second to think about if I'm moving, do I have concealment? And if I have no concealment and I can't run and I'm cornered in, I'm running towards that guy, right? And I'm going to scream like a banshee and act like a nut, and they're going to go, oh, what's this person doing, right? I'm very surprised. This is not a criticism because I don't have the information, but Paul and I talked about this. I'm surprised that a guy walks into a dense club with people very close to you with a long rifle, and somebody doesn't say, hey, pal, not me, and grab the rifle.
It's going to be
dark.
really interesting to see.
Yeah, there's been a
what
lot of
took
commentary
place,
around that.
you
Yeah,
know, in,
but
in that
and had
environment,
somebody
yeah.
been trained, and let me ask you this: what if everybody in that? What if it was a Green Beret nightclub, and they had training, right? Much lower fatality because of training. That's the only reason it'd be a lower fatality rate because Green Berets have been shot at, and they go, "No, you're not going to shoot me, and I'm going to do something about it."
Well,
And
you also got to think of the time of night too. It was the end of, or what you would consider typically the close of the bar.
You
It's
got
2
alcohol
a.m.
involved.
People
Yeah,
are
alcohol.
drunk. You
Yeah.
know,
This is very well executed, and we're finding out. We saw in the lobby watching CNN today that he had been to this club on numerous occasions, apparently, either recon or he was part of the community. We're not really sure which one it is, maybe both. And so he was familiar with it. He knew what was going on. This guy knew exactly what he was doing, right? And not all those events are that well planned. This one seems to be better planned than some of the other ones. But we talked about this before. It's this cognitive aggression. This is not a guy that's angry at you. This is a guy that's thinking of killing you because that's going to make him feel better, and he's committed to do it. That's the dangerous guy. Somebody yells and screams at you. You hit him in the head with your bobby stick, and that's it. The cognitive aggressor is not going to tip you off that he's going to kill you till he's killing you, really.
What about guns inside venues? I mean,
Well,
They're not allowed.
Right. And this is where the fraternal order of police, we talked about
Yeah.
this, with off-duty police officers. So again, it's an ongoing discussion. In my experiences, as a supervisor, I'd be called, to, an entry point, and, we'd verify the law enforcement. And, as I said to you, Chuck, we want to know where the good guys are sitting, right?
That's right.
We want to know what sections they're in. But again, there's a ton of liability involved. And whether or not, the venues are going to indemnify the officers when they're working contract.
I tell you where the liability is right now. This is flipped, all right? So I'm not saying that's your argument's baloney. That's
Right.
the venue's baloney, okay?
Exactly.
We have enough notice to now to know that had there been somebody at any of these places with a gun, that would have mitigated the damages.
Right.
Right? I don't know of many police officers I've read about that go wacky and start shooting people. It just doesn't happen.
But
And
what if the person with the gun in the nightclub is drinking themselves? Then what?
that's problematic. And
you shouldn't be drinking while you're carrying a firearm.
I
mean, it's as simple
I
as
have
that.
known and
Right,
worked with
but-
lots of cops, and I don't know that happens in California. It does,
Not
I'm sure,
anymore, to that
it's
extent,
yeah.
I don't think.
Oh, so people with guns don't drink? Is that what I'm
I'm not
understanding?
saying
No,
that. What I'm
no,
I'm
saying
just
is
asking questions.
most responsible people that have firearms do not do that. Okay.
Yeah.
They may
Because
drive
you-
drunk, but with a gun.
Because
it's a
you
different story.
know that if you use that firearm, it doesn't matter whether you're right or wrong. You're in
You're wrong.
jail for a long time.
That's right.
So I don't think most.
So here's something you're not going to know, but when I was a young police officer, you're going to find this incredible, by the way. So I was working at, let's see, where was I? San Gabriel, first department, and I want to go home after I've been a policeman 6 months. I want to see the family. So my chief writes a letter. Chuck Harold's a police officer at San Gabriel. Here's his ID number, and I want him to have a gun. And I hand the gun to the ticket counter. I hand the paper, and they escort me on the plane with my gun loaded. And the captain comes out and says, Officer Harold, nice to have you on board. And they seated me right by the cabin. And the captain knew who I was. And he said, if I called upon you, would you be able to help me? He said, absolutely. End of story. Do you find that incredible given today's environment? It's weird, right? It sounds weird given today's environment about what's going on. But I'll tell you what, one of these dumbasses stood up on a plane when I was in there. Sorry, pal, not today. All right. Now there's supposedly air marshals on there and things like that.
Right.
But that tells you how far we've shifted our view on these things, right? The fact that cops carried guns on planes in the past, did that stop anything? I don't know. We have no data on what didn't happen. Right. But we have data on what would happen if that occurred. So
I think
it's tricky stuff. I say, hell, cops, bring guns to football games.
Yeah, I'll say that.
I think the problem that immediately comes to my mind is, and we've discussed this before, the lost art of de-escalation. And so I would be concerned of an escalating threat, not a de-escalating threat
That's a
from
good
somebody
point.
who shows up with their own weapon.
How many years did you do?
21 years in law
All right.
enforcement.
And how many times did you take your gun out where you really thought you were going to have to kill somebody?
A few times.
A few.
Absolutely.
But not like 25 or 30.
Exactly.
Right. Now, we used our gun as a persuasion technique, just in case. But where I actually thought I was going to pop somebody, not too often, right?
Right.
So I agree that there may be a loss of that ability nowadays. But again, Am I going to take my gun out to persuade you to stop something as a policeman? I am not, right? The only reason I'm taking my gun out is to kill you. Bottom line. Because you've come to a threshold where I can't do anything with persuasion. You have a gun now, it's a immediate threat, boom.
Right, but you're untrained. Your comment about untrained security guards and lack of compliance with security guards is also something that we're seeing with people on the force, and
we are seeing some crazy
there's
stuff.
a lot of crazy stuff in the media of cops using escalated force, and so that's just my concern when you start talking about bringing guns into zones that are traditionally unarmed.
Not a bad point. Not a bad point.
Success. I win.
Jarvis is not chiming in on this. I know you got something to say. No, you do. Look at you.
But
You
you've got
jump in.
to, when you're looking at cop, I mean, it's a whole different show. But when you're looking at coppers getting involved in the sort of stuff they do for whatever reason, you've got to look at how many interactions with the public there are on a daily basis.
Millions.
And then
Number of
how
car
many
stops.
times that sort of thing actually happens. And it's so small.
It's not good.
You know,
but
it's
it
not
is-
good,
It's
and
not
I've
a
got
pandemic.
no idea why the hell a lot of it happens. I mean, most of it you look at and you go, "What the hell? What were you doing? What were you thinking?
I know.
Where the hell does that come from?"
It's a tough job.
You know,
Let's not
But-
talk about guns.
Yeah.
Let's talk about some high-tech solutions. Let's take guns out of it.
Okay.
Here's an idea from my expert.
Well-
and you can use this. Even though my show's copyrighted, you may use this, okay? I say we get, for example, license plate recognition. And we put that at all venues and stadiums with high cars. And Disneyland plugs it in, and it takes a picture of your license plate. And this is available now, by the way. There's people that have this. And then it takes your license plate and runs it in the DMV. And the first hour we say, wait a minute, I just got a text here. Here's a license plate we just ran. It's a cold plate. There's no record of it. And it's a 72 Toyota. I just pulled in the parking lot of Disneyland. I can do something with that information.
But the new car or the rental car or
It's a rental car. It came back to Enterprise. It's logical to be on vacation and have a rental car. But what if that same rental car kept showing up every Tuesday? Now I got a pattern. Now I can do something with those metrics and analytics,
Metrics,
and I can
yeah.
start looking at it and saying, you know what? This guy could be casing the joint. And we had that happen at Disney once where one day, one car showed up at all our properties in Burbank, about 4 properties.
if I was going to case a place, I would get without a license plate, get a new car or
And a
pull
new-
the plates off
And a new license plate means, is my rule I put in the computer, I'm going to respond to that.
or no license plate.
That's what I mean. No license plate or something, right? Or it's cold. And then my rule for security, my policy becomes, I'm going to handle this guy in his car a mile from the stadium or 6 blocks from Disneyland or whatever it is. And now I don't have a threat inside the park.
Well,
I have something contained.
We great points. We do a terrific job securing the inner perimeters, stadiums, venues, and arenas.
Right.
LPRs are great for exterior perimeters. If we have that information in advance, law enforcement can act upon it. And so it's incumbent upon security, everyone, bike patrol, everyone who is protecting. Because again, Paris, we saw what happened. Obviously, the threat was they tried to get into the stadium. Let's see what happens when folks egress. But again, it's those secondary and those third type of potential encounters that we need to focus on.
well, I
And
think
again, that falls into exterior perimeters.
in the
And how do you-
US.
how do you-
Go ahead.
How
Chris.
do you do that in securing large venues? Take, for example, Disneyland. You mentioned that, Chuck, and I'm not sure if you've been following on the comments made from the ex-wife. Apparently, he was scouting Disneyland
Right.
in Orlando.
Oh, I didn't
How-
know that.
Yeah,
That's
it's a new one.
interesting.
Yeah, it's
Oh.
a new one. Yeah.
How
Okay.
do you protect a space like that?
Well, technology is the integration of technology and proactive training go hand in hand with mitigating those potential threats. So again, as I mentioned earlier, the folks that work in the command centers, they're only as good as they know how to utilize that technology. So we have to figure out, and obviously we have the NBA championships going on. Golden State Warriors do a great job of connecting with their fan base. They use iBeacon technology, so you can get popcorn and upgrade your seats and all that good stuff.
Right.
We need to add security apps so that when folks go to Oracle Arena, they can tap a security app if there's a intoxicated patron section 101 or what have you. But to get that information, disseminate it to the command center, who in turn can send officers to that area to mitigate that risk before it escalates.
Well, see, I think that's over-engineering because I have 9 social media platforms on my phone that you should use because that's free and I already know how to use it, right? So I think a venue should sign up for 10 of those things, and you can use, what's that thing, Hootsuite or whatever it is, where you can send out a blast to all your social media things at one time, right? And they should say, we got a problem in Section 5, don't
Yep.
go to Section 5.
But-
And I'm going to get it on some of my social media that I'm using. I'm going to do something about
See,
it.
I think there's a bigger problem. I think there's a psychological barrier in the US, because of the way that it's sat for the last 200 years, that I could leave a briefcase out in Hollywood Boulevard now and it would sit there, unless somebody stole it, it would sit there for the next week.
Well,
And nobody would report it. You do that in London or Paris
Right.
or anywhere that's been exposed to war and all the rest of the stuff over the last couple of centuries, that stuff's going to get reported. And you see it time and time and time again here that nobody's got that mindset.
Everybody thinks they're
here.
safe.
And
To my
I don't
point-
think it's ever going to change.
Well, it's also collective environments, in
groupthink.
France, but in France, one of their mottos is fraternity, right? Brotherhood. In London, in Britain, you have, whether it was empire or nationalism, whatever it is, we favor rugged individualism here. So there's a little bit of,
Yeah, that's true. That's a good
everybody
point.
out
Yeah.
for
That's
themselves.
your second good point. Wow, you're
just
batting
I
a
don't know about
thousand.
y'all. If I see a briefcase or a backpack standing alone, I'm reporting that quickly.
Absolutely.
I mean, look at that car a couple of years ago in New York.
Yep.
I mean, that was ridiculous,
Yeah,
was it? The
absolutely.
whole weekend, that damn thing sat
Yep.
there.
So again, I mean, situational awareness, see something, say something, but the days of being politically correct are behind us.
Well, we have to stop, yeah.
We have to spread the message.
I picked up-
If it doesn't, I was going to say, one of the things that I learned, a few things in 21 years in law enforcement, is my actions have to be reasonable and necessary, and I have to articulate everything I do.
That's
but
right.
Everything is the real thing until proven otherwise, and that's the way we have to live our lives.
When I picked him up at the airport, I was waiting to cross the street in the parking area because I was packing and I didn't want to go anywhere near terminal. All right, just didn't want to take that chance. I thought, well, that was a good decision on my part, wasn't it?
Sure.
So all of a sudden, I turned to my left, and here's a piece of luggage and a little. I didn't know what it was at first, but it turned out to be a dog carrier, right? And I look around. Oh, nobody's there. Nobody's claiming it. Nobody's walking up to it. And I backed away from it, and I watched from a distance. And I was just getting ready to call something about it. And then some lady comes out from the parking lot with a dog, but she must have left it there for close to 5 minutes.
Oh, yeah,
That's
yeah.
crazy.
Crazy.
Okay.
Absolutely.
I had someone at the airport ask me to watch their bag for them. And I
Oh,
said,
no.
and I'm sure it was perfectly harmless, but I said, under no circumstances.
Would security guard radio allow me to do that?
But-
Right?
Absolutely
But
not.
see, with all the technology at LAX, how the hell was that able to sit there
Oh,
for
by the way,
5 minutes?
there was a
Right?
guard-
Got coppers everywhere.
there was a
guards
TSA guy across the
everywhere,
street. I know.
cameras. So they're not doing it. There's
It's
something
problematic.
wrong, right?
Here's another idea I have for you. All right. You can use this as long as they get some royalties on it,
Okay,
right?
you got it.
So if I was Disneyland or if I was LA Coliseum, I would get rid of ticket sales on the venue. You cannot buy a ticket here. You have to buy a ticket online, at Ticketmaster down the street, at the post office. I don't care where you buy it, you're not buying it here. Probably I'm going to say you're going to buy it online. And guess what? If you
Probably
can't,
like the White House, right? You have to, if you want to go on the White House tour, it has to be no more than 6 months out, but no less than 90 days out.
well,
and you have to,
Well, we couldn't put a time frame on an event, but
so they can be checked. So people can be
That's
checked.
right. So if we bring you into the electronic arena and you swipe your credit card, it could be a fake credit card, but let me finish the story because there's ways to find that out, okay? And then I'm automatically running a background check on you, and I'm checking what? I'm checking the watch list, the no-fly list. I'm checking the you can't buy a gun list. I'm checking everything I can check automatically when I buy the ticket. Right. And then when I show up with the ticket, I go to the parking with the ticket, and the ticket MIID, and maybe a third one, is your three-way authentication that kind of verifies your ID. And now, if it's a car bomb, you're way away from the venue. If you got a gun, I'm dealing with you now because now something doesn't match. Hopefully I catch people, and you know this, Paul, we would catch people doing that, right? Hey, you're a convicted felon with a firearm. You can't come to Disneyland, pal. Sorry about your civil rights. We're not going to let you in because it's a private venue. They can do things like that.
That's right.
That's a lot of fine print on the back of a ticket.
Well, listen, give me a better solution.
I'm not disagreeing. I'm just saying that
challenge.
as
I'm just saying we have to do
I'm not-
something. Right?
I agree, and I don't think I think that's moving towards reasonable, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where if you're going to have this many people in one location, if you want to go to that place, certainly if it's a private property, I sign up for to relinquish a measure of my privacy in order to take my family safely to Disneyland.
Well, I have what do you call that frequent traveler thing from TSA?
Oh, yeah.
the pre-check.
The pre-check, right.
Pre-check,
So
yeah.
I went down and I spent an hour down there, and they talked to me, asked me questions. They did a background check, fingerprints, blah blah blah. Cost me $125. So in theory, I can walk into LAX with this and be cleared. I don't see why you couldn't have pre-cleared for venues. A lot of box
Yeah.
seats, a lot of people that go all the time. let's get this guy cleared. Now that doesn't mean you couldn't go bad or change something, but you're doing something.
Right.
And it removes
try.
the
So
removes
does that
the
allow
bottleneck.
you not
Exactly.
to take your
Removes
shoes
the
off
bottleneck.
at LAX? Is that what it gives you?
Well, sometimes
It's another lane. You have
Sometimes
another
it-
lane
yeah.
you can
Now-
use.
I'm
So
not.
you've heard the story about
I'm not agreeing with the
me
completely,
traveling
I'm just
with
saying.
my wife, right?
Yeah.
And because she's never been, I mean, since we came over 30 odd years ago, she's never had a fingerprints taken, checked, nothing, right? Because she pays with the credit card. She goes through the super duper fast lane, and I still have to go through and take my clothes off.
And you've been fingerprinted a million
And
times.
it just makes no sense.
Well, it's not.
You're suspect.
It's not
It
perfect.
makes absolutely no sense whatsoever.
But it's something. It's an attempt to try to do
It's
something.
not. It's
Sure it is.
not because she paid on the credit card. It doesn't make any sense. They didn't check her name through anything. It was ridiculous.
All right.
It was the most ridiculous thing I've ever seen.
Magic Mountain
It's
with their
nonsense.
yearly annual pass and people renew those all the time? Should those be 10,000 people they could clear? And we really don't have to worry about those people. And I don't
It
know.
certainly would limit the number of people hanging out outside to
But
get
this-
into any.
but this
given
guy-
Which is a
window.
crowd, which is a
crowd,
a
which
public
is a
area.
soft target.
But this
Exactly.
guy yesterday,
Exactly.
correct me if I'm wrong, this guy yesterday went to that venue for 3 years,
He did. Right.
every Saturday night.
Right.
Yeah. He
All
knew-
right, so under your rules, he's fine because he goes regularly.
For that venue at that time. But there were other areas where we should have caught this guy. We should have caught him on the FBI checklist. We should
True.
have caught him with the wife saying, he beat me up, take his gun away, or take his ability to buy a gun away. In California, he wouldn't be able to buy it, right? It's all about layers.
Yeah.
I'm just saying it's
layers
a
of
layer.
protection. Yeah.
You know.
Absolutely.
And then, what? Remember what they did to the studios after 9/11? We took all our delivery places and moved them outside the studio, away from the studio. So all those
Well,
things
we
got
did,
checked and
not
cleared.
everybody.
Well, Warner Brothers did.
Yeah.
And
Oh,
there's
that's true.
some airports where the parking lot and the drop-off zone isn't anywhere near the
Right,
terminals at
right.
all, where you have to take a shuttle
Yeah,
to move in.
exactly.
That's not by accident.
It's not
Jarvis,
bad.
could we go over today? Or do you have to go home and feed your rabbit? Well, what to see. All right, because this is a good topic. We only got about 5 minutes left, but tell us about your book. We want to hold it up
Yeah.
and show Mr. Jarvis that book there so we can take a
That's
look.
one hell of a book, actually.
Up. There you go.
Oh, I'm sorry.
All right.
What's
There
it
you
called?
go.
What's it called?
Yeah, Security Supervision and Management, Theory and Practice of Asset Protection. Pleasure to work with Sandy Davis. I actually was a contributing author to Chapter 12, Supervising Special Events. So it's really proud of my first published work. And it's just a great opportunity to just add some more value in the sports security space, which, again, I think is a really a niche market discipline which requires high training on a daily basis. So
Tell me your number one takeaway from if you're speaking to somebody listening in a venue now. What can you tell them is your most successful method of managing an event?
I would say certainly, as we mentioned earlier, just kind of buying into the mantra that, times are different and we're going to have to just learn to kind of, accept, the challenges and do what we can to make ourselves safe. And that comes in terms of training and education and just realizing that, we live in a different world. And certainly we all need to buy into the mantra that we have to help one another. And, if we're going to enjoy family time, then we have to just understand that that's just the world that we live in.
Well, I know. Look, she made the face. Did you see her?
No,
No,
it just
that's-
reminded me. It just
You
reminded
said
me.
something similar earlier.
It reminded me of something that we've talked about a lot, which is training.
Exactly.
But to your point, which is a good point, we shouldn't have to accept those things. We shouldn't be living like this, and I
No,
agree.
but we can run both tracks at the same time.
That's true.
I think that that's something also that people forget when they get so entrenched in their camps, which is I can walk and chew gum at the same time. I can work on multiple problems or multiple angles on dealing with one problem at the same time. Let's not limit ourselves.
And Facebook postcards don't really solve the problem. So participate, belong, suggest, criticize. Criticism doesn't really work. It doesn't work. Now, tell me, where are people buying into this? Where is this being driven from? Is this coming from the C-level down in a venue? Is it coming from the owner down? Is it coming from the security director? And is he pushing these things back up? Where's the bottleneck that we don't see these sort of things being, talked about, accepted, whatever?
Well, I think a lot of times we have these discussions certainly after tragedy strikes.
After tragedies, right.
And we have to try to change that. So I think it's, to answer your question, it's a combination of many different facets. But again, the education is key. The training is key. And as I mentioned, before the show, we're not here to create fear. We're not fear mongers. Yes, these are difficult times, but at the end of the day, we have to do everything we can to create a heightened sense of awareness so that we're safe and secure.
Ounce of prevention.
Yeah, James, we have about 30 seconds. So give us how we get a hold of you, website, information, articles you've written. Tell us how we can find you.
Again, Charlie, absolute pleasure and honor to be with everyone here, coming out to LA, and certainly a very sad weekend in Orlando, but hopefully we can come together as a nation and work together to, help each other be safe and sound. James DeMeo, I'm the president, CEO, founder of Unified Sports and Entertainment Security Consulting based in Austin, Texas. I'm on Facebook. I have Sports Security Professionals, which is a group that I started. And again, the more knowledge that we share, it gives us the ability to have continued conversations. Research is important, as I mentioned earlier. The research is only as good as if we use it effectively. Certainly, my work with NASM, I was involved in a research project that was presented in Orlando on June 4th as far as the overall impact of security and guest services on the overall fan experience. So these are just important things, and we haven't even talked about drones. I mean, we've been talking about...
We missed the drone discussion.
This is a whole
You want to
other...
know what I'm glad
Well, it's
we
'cause you was
didn't, 'cause
droning
we would
on, that's
really-
all.
Well, that's true.
So that's just another...
Touche, Mr. Bristow. Paul Bristow,
And
Hood
we'd
Ray
go
Wine
round
Trop.
and round.
Sharice Gutierrez, the Cyber Gal. Thanks for coming in.
Thank you.
Thanks
Bye,
for joining
guys.
us on Security Guard Radio. And James, you'll have to come back and we'll
Thank you
do
so
another
much.
show.
Cheers.
Thanks so much.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.